All right, it's January 2nd, 2025. Today we are talking about the Sacramento Kings and their recent firing of Mike Brown. So let's get into this right now. Let's look at some stats off the bat. The team is sitting at 15 and 19 at the time of this recording. They had a 6 and 12 home record at the time of the firing and of their 25th in three-point shooting. All right, now there's that kind of paints the picture for you right there. Obviously, 25th in three-point shooting, you're not going to be winning games. And then 6 and 12 at home, something's got to give. We got to look at leadership here. When you're playing that poorly like that at home, usually that's a leadership thing. And obviously, 15 and 19, much higher hopes for a team like this. But in a conference as stacked as the West, and also you make a major addition like DeRozan to the team, and we'll talk about that too. I don't know. I'm not really rushing to pull the trigger on it with that record, but there are other angles to this. So let's talk about that. Two major things to look at here, two major directions we want to go with here in analyzing this move is the basketball angle. You know, was this move bad or good for basketball reasons, and then also just from a management standpoint and where this organization is timing wise. Is this a good time to make a move like this, or what kind of move should they have made? The short answer there is I think Mike Brown was a perfect coach, the perfect level of coach for where this organization is and their growth. I just don't think they should be looking to. They shouldn't be trying to jump the gun, trying to move too fast with this team. They should be trying to establish themselves as just a regular playoff team in the first place before trying to, tinker with winning. I think they're getting ahead of themselves there. However, in today's league with these players, there is a timeline on these things. There is these things are time sensitive, and specifically, I'm talking about Darren Fox and his satisfaction there. You got to keep him happy in a place like Sacramento. So that could be the reason why we have heard some rumblings about that. And if that's what we're getting at, then you can understand. I can understand a move like this, but from my opinion, Mike Brown is exactly the level of coach you're looking for at this period of time, at least for another 1, 2, 3 years. You're trying to make the playoffs, and that gives him time to grow to see if he can burst through the ceiling that he has always been right over his head, hanging over his head. And you can check that out. And that gives you some time to bolster the roster. And that's really what they should. Because you look at this roster, man, that roster's not doing anything. And your stars look nice. You had Darren Fox. You can have some expectations. You add a guy like DeRozan to the mix. And like I said, we're going to talk about him. But we look at that rest of the roster. What are you going to do with that, man? That's a joke to fire a coach before even giving him a better roster to see what you can do with it. And this really reminds me of those old Raptors teams of the 2010s with Dwayne Casey. They could have fired him in 2015, man. Like he did not cut it. He gets swept by the Wizards, I believe, in 2015. The Raptors did. And you got some talent on your team. I mean, that's just bad coaching to get swept like that. You get 2 home games. That's bad coaching. There's no excuses on there. But at the same time, the roster was so bad. You were going up against a great backcourt, and you had such terrible defense. You were playing Grievous Vasquez, Lou Williams, and DeRozan on the court at the same time. And they had Larry guarding the wing. Oh, that was not going to cut it. So I think Masai understood it there. He gave Casey a better roster. Casey was good enough to evaluate where the holes were in the roster, and then from there they could adjust the coaching, and they adjusted their star player in DeMar as well. And you look at this Kings team; it's the same thing. They're not in a position where they can pull the trigger and make, what I mean, or have any real high expectations. They got to establish themselves as a playoff team first. And Mike Brown was definitely the coach to do that. So to fire him at this time when they should be establishing themselves as a playoff team is a huge no-no. Is a huge failure. And specifically in terms of like what the front office could be doing for him on that roster, they could be, in terms of how they could be bolstering the roster. I mean, they need more shooting. And Kevin Herter has been shitting the bed. They need way better defense. They need more size on the wings. Because of Sabonis, the unique type of center he is, you need a backup center who can really give you what he doesn't have, which is that shooting and a lot of length. Now you do have Alex Len, but he's not that. He's a third string center. You keep him on the team because he's professional. He shows up to work, but you're not relying on him to win games. Not Alex Len. So I mean, those are things that the GM could have done better, and they should have done better before even thinking about firing Mike Brown. All right, now from the basketball standpoint, I also do think Mike Brown was not the right coach for the long term. Like he just from basketball standpoint, he wasn't going to get the most of the group that you have right now, and he wasn't going to take you over the edge once you had the right group. He wasn't going to take them to a chip. I don't think he was that coach personally, but either way, you were supposed to, you weren't going to judge him on the championship contention just yet, anyways. But in the meantime, in the short term, there are a couple things that you can assess him on, and I do think he failed to do that. I don't think he was going to be getting the most out of this mix of players, which is already a tough job for any coach to get these guys adding DeRozan to a motion offense, a perfectly working motion offense. That's just a bad move to. It's a tough position to put your coach in. And then to fire him for not working at work, man, it's really not good, man. That organization is it's a joke. But I'm gonna go with three Ds here. DeRozan's one of them. The development of this team is another one, and then the defense. And those are the three ones. We'll talk about defense quickly. There was none whatsoever. This team they played hard though. They liked their coach. They played hard, but they really didn't have a system. Yeah, or if they did, it didn't look like it. Didn't look like they knew what they were doing. So that's one thing that could have been better. It seems like he really focused on offense and had that working, and he tried to hide the defense just by outrunning the other team. When I don't know, with guys like Fox and Sabonis, yeah, you can work with them. There's some serious holes, but you can work with them. And if you work with it, then you can let your offense carry you the rest of the way. But just to rely on your offense the whole way through to basically to substitute your defense, man, it doesn't. We gotta know that at the playoffs in the Western Conference too. Come on, man. That's the first D. The second D is development. And let me read you a list of players that I expected more from on this team. You got Keegan Murray, you got Trey Lyles, Keon Ennis, and even Darren Fox is a little bit moved to go, but obviously he's playing great. Now, first we'll talk about who looks great because of Mike Brown, and that's one Malik Monk. Give him credit. Malik Monk has really shined since Mike Brown took over, and he's been able to find his place in the league because he had trouble before that. So we'll give him credit there, but that was more of a fit and a timing thing. They just crossed each other's paths at the right time and needed each other. But when you look at the three players, Keegan, Lyles, Murray, Lyles, and Ellis, okay, Keon Ellis, you're getting some more from him, but you should be playing more. But between Keegan and Lyles, there's another gear that both of those guys. Keegan's got 2 or 3 more gears that he should be operating with, and Trey Lyles, he's got at least one more gear. That being consistent shooting, consistent playing time. But he looks like a total dud out there. I feel like there's got to be a coach that could get more from him than what Sacramento's been able to produce. That's just my 2 cents. I think he's not going to be a great defender and not an outstanding rotation player, but for what Sacramento needs, there's plenty of room for Trey Lyles to produce more, and he's just not doing it. So I think from a development standpoint, I don't think Mike Brown is the best. I don't think he's bad per se, but I think for a place like Sacramento, you really need internal development to churn out talent because you're not going to be getting it in the free agent market. Um, and your front office just stinks. So you're not expecting much from trading, but the draft pieces you bring in, you got to be able to develop them. So obviously, I think everybody knows that this GM's front office here and the ownership crew at Sacramento is a joke. They're not bringing in good talent, bringing good leadership. But with what they got right now, with what they're dealing with right now, I do think Mike Brown could have done better in the development standpoint. Now, the last thing we'll talk about is DeRozan. Oh, this is a tough one. This is a tough one. I think most people didn't see the fit here. Most people agreed, to bring in a guy who's a mid-range assassin on a team who's plays through their big, who can't shoot, and needs to stay near the basket and is a little undersized as it is, so he's not a lob threat in the pick and roll. And to have a point guard who's not really a true floor general type, he kind of needs to score. He needs a motion offense around him and the support in the playmaking department, because he can get a little bit loose. So it's really not the natural fit for DeRozan. That's not to say it wasn't there. He couldn't make it happen, but it is tough because especially on the defensive end, you need a big who can cover DeRozan's ass at the rim, because DeRozan is going to be a liability on defense. Oh, it's tough. It's tough. You look around the league. I really think San Antonio, like Victor Wembanyama, he's the only person that you can really pair DeRozan with, who's going to cover him on defense, who can space the floor for him on offense, and then he just doesn't play in the same areas as DeRozan. They can just play around each other. Otherwise, DeRozan as a ball dominant guy, heliocentric player. He's so good at what he does. He's so potent at what he does, but he just can't seem to fit in with the group. Like, if you're bringing in DeRozan, you kind of have to know what you're dealing with off the bat. You're not going to expect this guy to finally take that leap, with all the things that you haven't seen from him thus far. So what you can realistically expect, maybe he can finally, take one more step in the corner three-point shooting. That's one thing you could realistically expect. All right, so then if he can become a better corner three-pointer, then you can break this offense apart. And instead of doing a motion thing where it's free-flowing, you can do a lot more of the ISO stuff. DeRozan's going to take the cake on his. He's going to shoot in the corner well enough for De'Aaron Fox to do his thing. Problem is, Fox, he can be very flimsy. Once you open it up like that, you're leaving a lot of decision-making up to the players, a lot of the creation up to the players, as opposed to within a free-flowing offense. I mean, Fox can create, of course, but that decision-making can get kind of floppy. And Sabonis is the best for that. And then Sabonis, with his limited shooting and his limited speed and athleticism and height, he also benefits. He also kind of needs that motion offense, because having everyone flowing like that lets him use his brain a little bit more to his advantage and hide his limitations. But when you want to put him into more of an ISO-oriented offense, similar to, say, what New York does, now you need a center who, if they're not going to create for themselves and they can't shoot the jumper, then you got to be able to jump and run to create space in that pick and roll situation. And Sabonis is not that guy. So the fit is awkward. It's not impossible. It's not impossible, but it's really, really, really hard. And you know what? It's damn near impossible, because you really can't really rely on DeRozan to fit into a team like that. He's got to be the guy that the team fits around, but he can't really fit around action outside of him. And then De'Aaron Fox, he's not really he's not really that big playmaker, but again, you don't really have a choice, and that's how I'm judging Mike Brown on. These are the guys you brought in. Let's look at it. What can you really do about it? Well, if we're bringing in DeRozan, then one, we need to see Sabonis shooting straightaway threes and corner threes. Saw it a couple times, but it's really got to become a mainstay. We got to get a lot of those reps up early in the season. And then, of course, we're looking at Fox. We're going to need him to grow as a floor general. And you know what? These are things that both of these guys are going to have to do later in their career eventually anyways. If they're going to win a chip, they're going to have to do these things anyways. So it isn't the most egregious ask from a front office, but, man, the whole handling of this is just so messy. So messy. All right. The only other thing that also is you could make DeRozan more of a facilitator and really turn the thing over to him, because he is so potent in it, and then allow slowly for Fox and these guys to find out where they fit in. Just because in the short term it makes it easier to get W's playing off DeRozan, and then in the long term, in the conference like this, you can't afford to lose too many games. There's not a lot of time to figure out who you are, figure out your identity. So to come in and just play after Rosen off the bat and really adjust to him early, because he can single-handedly raise your floor like that, that might have been smarter too. But either way, there's just so many things that I didn't see from Mike Brown that for basketball reasons, I don't think he was going to be the right long-term fit for this team. But in the short term, for 2-3 seasons, for sure, this guy should have been there. He was the right guy. So this is definitely a questionable move. But I don't think anyone is really questioning it. I think everyone knows that this front office is incompetent. And that's just one of those things that, you grow up, you become an adult, it really baffles you that leadership can be so incompetent. And they can have really competent staff underneath them and blow it. Just blow it. That's all I have to say on that. With that said, we got Doug Christie in the chair right now. Obviously, a long time NBA coach, and Jay Triano is on that sideline as well for them. So they're not in the worst of hands. On the sidelines at least. So obviously the front office, I can't speak for that. So we'll see what happens with them. Good luck to Sacramento. Good luck to their fans. Although they're used to this at that time, at least it is another explosive storyline. All right, we'll check back in with you with the next one. Cheers.